Well, good morning. My name is Ken Drish. I work for Instawork, which is a national on-demand kind of tech-enabled retail execution platform, staffing platform. I live in Northwest Arkansas. I've been here about 18 years. My background is largely been working in business development for traditional sales and marketing agencies. I've spent years at Acosta, probably about 7 years, about 12 years at Crossmark. I've worked for Trax Retail. And basically, I spend my time working with retailers, consumer packaged goods companies, and other agencies to assist them in uh, really helping to execute retail projects, resets, remodels, new item cut-ins, etc. So I joined Instawork almost a year ago, and there's several reasons that I did so. But let me tell you a little bit about Instawork. Our mission is really to create economic opportunity for the now millions of people that across the country are looking for flexible work. Some people may call it gig work. Some people may call it a side hustle. I simply call it a second or a third job. But there are now millions of people across the country that look for this kind of work. They may not necessarily be looking for a full-time 9 to 5 job or an 8 to 4 job, but maybe they own a business and they want to work on weekends, or they have specific days of the week that they want to work. Maybe they want to work overnights. What our platform does, and what we developed in 2016, is a platform that really curates all of these now millions of individuals that are looking for flexible work. And we align that with work from our partners in terms of what they're looking for. Again, Instawork got started in 2016. We're a Silicon Valley-based organization. If you look at our really our board of directors, as well as our executive team, it's a who's who of folks who've come from traditionally technology companies, big tech companies, Oracle, Microsoft, Google, Grubhub, Uber, and that was their goal, was to develop this platform to really leverage the technology to curate individuals that are looking for this flexible work. We got our start in hospitality. Big clients are Marriott and Hilton and Hyatt. We also then watched that really kind of transfer into food service. So companies like Aramark and Sodexo will, typically if you were to go to a concert today or a large sporting event, there are probably dozens, if not hundreds, of Instawork pros working shifts at concession stands, light security, etc. When COVID hit, that obviously put a very big stop to that type of work for a pretty lengthy period of time. And we were really, like a lot of other companies in COVID, forced to pivot. And we pivoted to other verticals, service verticals, such as light industrial. So assisting people in their warehouses, doing picking and packing, forklift drivers, et cetera. And then at that time, we really kind of pivoted to retail. And I joined the company with my background in retail services. Like I said, a little bit over a year ago, started first as a consultant. Really liked what I saw and saw the difference in what we do compared to a traditional agency model, and really find it complementary if you have an agency today, or as really a solution rather than an agency. So it's been very interesting. I've been, like I said, here about a year, and the way that we go about executing at retail is very different. The best way to really kind of think about it is think about like an Uber and Lyft and what they did to the transportation space to disrupt that. Very similar. The ability for a consumer packaged goods company or a retailer to literally post jobs to our network and have those jobs filled in as little as a couple of hours with skilled, vetted, and qualified retail pros. So that's kind of a little bit about Instawork and our mission and kind of how we started. I think as I mentioned, we started in 2016 and found a very big market in hospitality and in food service. And COVID obviously changed things and forced us to pivot, but it was always kind of our intention to have very thoughtful growth in going to verticals where we knew there was a need, and we knew that that need could be filled with flexible labor, really kind of part of this gig economy. Um, and in terms of thoughtful growth, we're not out there necessarily providing high skilled labor. We're not looking to fill pharmacy techs or data technicians or IT roles. What we're really filling right now are really general labor roles. So if you think about in the hospitality space, we're filling banquet servers and maid staff and line cooks. In food service, we're concession stand workers, light security. In light industrial, pickers and packers inside of a warehouse, forklift drivers. In retail, obviously merchandisers, people that can assist with new store openings, display building, new item cut-ins, really everything a traditional agency can do. As we, as I mentioned, thoughtful growth, as we continue to find areas in the labor market that have a need for this type of labor, we're going to thoughtfully consider growing into those verticals. And really, that's how light industrial came about and ultimately how retail came about. We are now really on the verge of looking at a couple of other key industries right now, but mostly within what we do already, just to add that a little bit of a higher skill set, not necessarily in retail, but in some other areas. But if there's a business to be had, and it makes logistical sense, and we can provide a valuable, productive solution, then we'll get into that space. But we're only going to get into the spaces that make sense for what we can do, and being able to deliver the kind of results our partners are looking for. Yeah, it's a great question. There's so many things that we can do to support major retailers, mid-tier retailers, even smaller retailers. So if you think about what's going on in the labor market, and it's really was exacerbated by COVID, you had a tremendous amount of people that were forced to find other things to do during COVID, and then kind of coming out of COVID, what you have is, and really as a result of companies like Uber and Lyft and Grubhub and DoorDash, you have a massive group of individuals across the country that want flexible work, as I kind of mentioned in my opening. What Instawork has been able to do is kind of build this platform that curates those individuals. But if you think, let's bring it down to retailers. So a retailer today on a national basis, at a turnover level, while unemployment is low, there's still a massive demand in the workforce for people that want this kind of flexible work. And we continue to see our numbers just skyrocket in terms of number of people on the platform. We currently have 7 million people on our platform today. Most of that has been through organic growth. And, you might say, wow, 7 million people, that sounds far-fetched. We don't necessarily have 7 million people that are working every day, just 7 million people that are on the platform. We're probably deploying about 100,000 shifts a week, a shift being anywhere from an hour to 8 hours, really kind of a project. And if you think about a retailer today, they're turning over at the part-time level. Typically the number's about 150%. Some channels it's even higher. Some it's less if you have a retailer with a really high brand recognition where people, really value the brand and, have good longevity in staying there. But that's a real challenge when you have massive amounts of turnover like that. Imagine in a smaller footprint store like the value channel, where they may only have 2.5 full-time equivalents running that store. If you lose one or even two of those people, Lord forbid, that store suddenly can go behind on freight. They can go behind on getting their planograms executed, getting their marketing programs executed, and they can be in real trouble. We have a C-store retailer that we work with that they were having such a hard time filling their third shift, which ironically the third shift was the shift where they packed out the delivery that came 2-3 times a week. They maintained the store, but they're having such a hard time filling that third shift that they were literally jeopardizing their operating hours. They weren't going to be able to open. So now they turned to Instawork to fill that third shift, and we're now going in there on their behalf and packing out the truck while their main associate in the store is taking care of the customer and the more customer facing and ringing the register. That's just one example of what we can do. Resets and remodels, another major challenge for retailers that want to stay relevant today, are going to need to keep updating their stores and keeping them fresh and keeping the customer experience really high. So you still have many retailers that are opening new stores, remodeling their stores to keep them fresh. And for a traditional agency that would typically fill that, or even the retailer, especially in some of the locations that we're talking about, it's very difficult to get a group of people, especially in a far-reaching market, that is skilled enough to go in there and assist with a remodel. If you think about a large format store, and I'll just use Walmart as an example, some of their remodels take 12 weeks. They require up to 40 people overnight for 12 weeks in a row. And if you're in a challenging geographic market, it just doesn't make sense for an agency to hire 40 people, because what are you going to do with those 40 individuals once that remodel is over and the next one is 2 hours away or 2 states away? What Instawork can do is we have skilled labor in those markets that can augment those teams. So that agency may have a team lead, but then we can bring in local skilled labor and really drive the economics of the program down and drive the quality up, because we've got skilled workers that understand how to read planograms and modulars and can execute that kind of work based on their skill sets and from what they've historically done. They just want flexible work, and our platform curates and coordinates all of that. So we're able to really drive that. And then even project work, if you think about Uber, right? You're not going to wait for an Uber for a day to get your ride. Transversely, if you're a consumer goods company or a retailer that needs something done tomorrow, the traditional agency approach usually requires 3 to 4 weeks lead time, and it requires you to kind of fit into a pre-established model that they've been operating now for decades. What our model does is we've got individuals that are available, much like an Uber would be available, not necessarily in minutes in our case, but literally in hours, versus what a traditional agency or service company may take a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks to execute. Literally, if I were called by a consumer company today and asked, hey, I need you to visit 500, stores across the country tomorrow, I could start executing that as early as this afternoon. So the speed capability is really huge. And when you're pressed, if you have a significant need, if your display was failing in a store and it needs a quick fix to get something done, if you need to gather insight and information very quickly, we can do that. If you need to, ensure that your items are out of the back room for the upcoming season or your new item launch, and maybe based on the data that you see, at point of sale data that you see, you're not seeing sales in certain stores, we can immediately start to take action on that. So I think in terms of how we're helping retailers today is we're providing a solution that really fills their immediate need, whether it's operational, in my C-store example, where we're helping to fill kind of operational roles, or it's supportive of a major project that might be going on. We work, as I mentioned, directly with retailers as the customer, directly with agencies who already have pre-existing retail contracts, or consumer goods companies. So our client base really varies, but those are really kind of the 3 key types of partners that we have today, and where we're able to really drive value, and it's working. I can tell you, I've been in this space for about 30 years. I've sold traditional retail space, and there's obviously those companies we're not looking to replace. If anything, we're looking to augment them. They may, perhaps maybe their coverage model calls for them to only call on 50% of the target stores or 80% of the target stores. Well, what if you need help in the 50 or the 20%? that aren't in coverage? That's where we can step in. What if you have geographies that are just, there's not enough critical mass in terms of work for an agency to cover, but maybe we can cover that location, or maybe it's an independent grocer where the large agencies just don't cover those locations anymore based on volume, but you need help there. We can step in and do that. If you're a retailer that's experienced, like I mentioned in the C-store example, huge turnover with certain positions, we can come in, step in and help you fill that. And then the last thing that I'll say specifically for retailers is we offer the opportunity really to, test and try out individuals. So if you think about a seasonal effort around Q4, large retailers such as Best Buy and Walmart and Target and et cetera do a huge amount of business in the fourth quarter. And the traditional model has, okay, we're going to go out and we're going to research, we're going to recruit, we're going to train, and then we're going to deploy individuals for that seasonal period, typically depending on the retailer for 12 weeks, 8 weeks, sometimes even only 4 weeks. Well, think about the cost that goes into recruiting and researching and then training those individuals to do that seasonal work that is largely only going to be temporary. Yes, some of them will bring those folks on, ultimately long term. But I can tell you, I spoke with a large retailer about their seasonal effort that they've been doing for years. Last year, they, and this would have been 2023, they hired 27,000 people for seasonal roles. They put them through 4 weeks of training. And when it came time to deploy, a third of the individuals that were recruited, researched, recruited, and trained, a third of them didn't show up. So think about the wasted costs that went into that. When you can come to an option like an Instawork and have our individuals, without having to go through the recruiting, knowing that our individuals are vetted and qualified, be able to come in and fill your seasonal service need of packing up product, ensuring that the stores are in good shape for the consumers that are coming in for the holiday. It's just a very different way of looking at how you could solve kind of an age-old problem around the need for a spike in labor that's going to be really only used short-term. So said a lot there, but lots of different things that we can do to help the retailer, the consumer goods company, as well as the agencies that are out there. Yeah, it's a great question. AI is obviously the buzzword, right? We are heavily employing AI in the way that we identify individuals, in the way that we screen individuals to develop and put them into the skill sets of the verticals that we deploy. So AI is really, obviously changing the world in many ways, and it's a very big part of what Instawork does. It's really the backbone of how we essentially source individuals that are going to come onto the platform, how we screen and vet individuals that are on the platform. It's one thing to be a job board where you're able to post, jobs that maybe your current clients have available. But it's absolutely critical to ensure that the right person is deployed to the right job, and we utilize AI to do that. If I were to utilize one of our folks that's very strong in hospitality and try to deploy them to a retailer to execute a planogram reset, they're obviously not going to do well because that's not an area they're experienced in. At the same time, one of our merchandisers that might be a professional that's on our platform working retail would not be a good choice to go in and be a line cook or take a work at a concession stand for a food service company. So the AI is really helping us do all of that stuff in a much more efficient manner and in a much more effective manner. If you look at I mentioned our platform has about 7 million people on it today, and that continues to grow as people find out that we're a great solution for being able to provide people with your flexible scenario. If you think about that, you've got we've been able to isolate about 200,000 of those individuals that are retail professionals today. So, and that number continues to expand as we grow with our partners. For the retailer, as I just mentioned in the question about, what we can do from a seasonal perspective, that's a very unique way that we can make a retailer much more efficient. We can be kind of a screening place for a retailer to be able to screen individuals prior to going to work for them. Our model is really flexible in terms of we want to work with how the partners want us to work, whether that's filling a temporary role, whether that's filling a permanent role, whether it's filling a temporary role that ultimately turns into a full-time role where that individual, becomes an employee of the retailer. These are all areas that, we excel in and we help with. And one of the key things with AI and that I'm super excited to talk about is Instawork is just launched a new product called Instawork Hiring. And this is where, for a subscription fee, we open up our entire platform of 7 million individuals and the history of our company of working with us for 9 years. So all of the details, all of the metrics of 7 million individuals, what their skill sets are, their history of work. And we've now opened that up to individuals who want access to that database to be able to go in and hire their own individuals. So we're really able to leverage AI to do a lot of that type of work, and now offering a solution for a pre-vetted, already skilled, coming to you with a history of their work prior to you even having to go through and do all that work on your own. So it's been a very unique product to get into. So again, multifaceted ways that we utilize AE. We're not unlike other companies that are trying every day to figure out how AI can help us be more productive. And we'll continue to do so and launch new products as they evolve and as there's a need that fits, that can deliver a return on investment to our clients or our partners. There are a lot of jobs and projects and work that retailers come to us with that may be just a short-term need. Maybe they need somebody for a week to help execute an assist in a remodel or a reset. Maybe they only need us for a day. Maybe they only need us for a couple of hours. That's a big part of what we do. But then there's also a big part of longer term type of projects. Maybe in my Walmart example I used, where it's a 12-week effort. And individuals and retailers and agencies that support them are looking for a consistent person that can be there for the full 12 weeks. Obviously, you don't want to keep having a new person show up day in and day out. So when we post those types of jobs, we're able to post them in a fashion where it's a long-term shift or a long-term staffing. So we're looking to get individuals that will agree to do that work for the full 12 weeks. Or maybe it's maybe there's a need in a retailer for somebody to work in their warehouse for 3 months or 6 months, or maybe retailers are, and that would be considered a long-term shift. Maybe there's retailers that are going to use our platform to really identify individuals that could be a long-term fit for them. But at first, they want to just make sure that the individual is the right fit. So maybe they'll use them for the first 3 months and agree that that person's the right fit, and then they'll make the move to transfer them to an employee. So lots of ways for us to do both short-term and long-term staffing. And now with our Instawork hiring platform, that's a platform where you're essentially just tapping into our network. You're not even working through us to deploy the individual. We're just facilitating the interview process for you and giving you access to the now millions of people in the work history that and skill sets that those individuals have. So lots of different ways around long-term staffing that we can assist with. Traditionally, a retailer will research, recruit, and bring folks on for a very short period of time. It's a largely historic model that can probably, for many of these retailers, be done differently. And we think Instawork is a good solution because it allows you to tap into a pool that's already vetted, and can be used temporarily without you having to go through those recruiting costs and training costs, et cetera. So another way, if you think about, where you have labor shortages, obviously turnover is a challenge. What I would say is retailers, really smart retailers, are isolating positions. In the C-store example I gave of the overnight shifts, what the feedback was from our retail partner was that the individuals that they were hiring for overnights were fine ringing the register and being customer facing, but that individual didn't necessarily want to be able, between customers, run into the back and start packing out stock, or run into the cooler and replenish the cooler. So a retailer like that is now starting to kind of separate the tasks. Same with, I'm going to jump back here a little bit to seasonal. Same with seasonal. Oftentimes a retailer will hire somebody to be and they'll try and boil the ocean and try and have that individual be able to be trained on several different disciplines in the store. Well, to train somebody to be customer facing, to know all your policies, to be able to go in the back room and pack product out, to know how to update a planogram is very challenging. But maybe you separate 2 or 3 of those tasks, and then you group them into a position where the individual maybe that you bring in from Instawork is only going to go in there and stock product, or pull product down from the back room, or help people with curbside pickup. They're not going to be kind of the everything for that store. They're not going to ring the register. Therefore, they don't have to be trained on that and all of those things. So that's another way to be efficient. I will tell you, if you think of small formats, and this is a huge focus for us, we're going to be launching a project or a product very soon that's going to be really akin to a SWAT team concept. So think about a small format retailer that's maybe run with only 2 or 3 full-time equivalents. If that retailer suddenly has 2 or 3 of those individuals quit, very quickly that store can go behind on freight, can go behind on planogram updates. We've all seen it. We've walked into a store where there's tons and tons of freight in the store. I'll tell you, I walked into a store here in Bella Vista on Sunday night to pick up a few essentials. I won't name the store to protect them, but there was literally, and I took photos of this, there were U-boats, which is kind of the cart that carries a lot of stock for these stores when they're moving it from the back room to the floor. There were at least 35 of these U-boats full of stock up and down the aisles, literally blocking massive amounts of categories that, as a customer, I was going to have to try and ask somebody to move that U-boat if I wanted to access the products in that category, or I was going to have to move it myself. But literally, they were so far behind. And I happened to talk to an associate, and I said, yeah, well, kind of what's going on here? It's really kind of hard to navigate the store. I couldn't even push a cart through there. And his response was, man, we've had some really bad turnover. I'm the only one here. I'm ringing the register. I'm trying to get this freight packed out. It doesn't fit in the back room. We just don't have the room. The back room is packed. So imagine a scenario where a retailer can deploy an Instawork SWAT team that can go into a store, 5, 10 people, and report to that store manager for 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, whatever it takes to get that store back on track. Imagine our ability to do that and do it starting tomorrow, to get that store back on track. Historically, when a store goes off the rails like that, the retailer will pull people from other locations, from other locations, which could then potentially create a snowball effect where those other stores are now falling behind. So please, I would encourage the audience to look at us as a potential solution in those kind of emergency situations. Another crazy situation, and believe it or not, this happens with a lot of retailers today, especially national retailers with lots of stores. There are scenarios where either it's weather-based, where there was a hurricane or a weather event that happened in a store and just disrupted the store, and they need somebody to go in there and help clean it up and get it back. There are things called car strikes. And this sounds crazy that this, would happen as often as it does, but there are major retailers where a car has accidentally gone through the front glass, and the store needs somebody to come in and instantly help clean that up. Obviously they need new windows and doors, which we don't do, but we can go in there and help fix the displays that have been hit or fallen down. So very, scenarios where there's suddenly an urgent need for labor, we're a solution that can bring that about. I know it sounds odd to talk about a car strike in the store, but there are retailers with an average of 3 or 4 of those a week that go on. So it's a very interesting type of scenario. That on top of seasonal type of work, even around some of the summer holidays. Think about what we're coming up against here for convenience stores. Convenience stores start really doing a huge business starting Memorial Day, and that goes through Labor Day, where the volume of those locations just outstrips the labor in the stores to be able to handle it. So what are people buying in a C-store? Well, they're coming in and they're buying their tobacco products, they're buying their soda and their beer, their salty snacks. So our ability to deploy people, and we do this for a lot of C-store retailers today, 3 to 4 times a week to go in and do nothing but pack out and make sure that cooler stays full, and the customer stays happy. Because if you're a customer that's going in and your cooler's wiped out, that customer's simply going to go to another store. So and if your person is so busy ringing register, they're not going to have the time to pack those coolers out. So lots of different ways that we can assist in labor shortages, seasonal periods, etc. So let's talk about new store openings. And we have a retailer that we work with that is an apparel retailer that I actually signed in June of last year. They were a retailer that started off as an omni-channel or an online-only retailer that got into bricks and mortar, and they've had tremendous success. They're a mall, more of a mall format or a footprint, probably 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. So think about a typical mall location or a strip mall location. So a smaller format, but as they rolled out to new markets, effectively their process for deploying a new store and executing a new store setup prior to it opening was to go into that market, search for local temp agencies, of which there's thousands of them out there, and sometimes have to cobble together 3 or 4 temp agencies. So think about 3 or 4 contracts, 3 or 4 sets of legal terms, payment terms, processes, reporting platforms, etc., to get their work done. This particular retailer needed 15 to 20 people on the first night once they got the occupancy permit. That first night was dedicated to unpacking the truck, moving all of the product and the fixturing to the floor of the store, and then going about setting up that store, building the fixtures, stocking the product, etc. The next 2 to 3 days, they keep 3 or 4 of those individuals to kind of tweak the store and continue to get it ready for opening. They soft open on Thursday and then they grand open on Friday. So rather than going through all that red tape of trying to source the temp agency, sign all those contracts, understand all those processes, they now come to Instawork, who has a national platform. So they've effectively got one resource, one reporting platform, and we now support all of their new store openings, whether that's in Minneapolis or in Maine or in Florida or in Texas or really anywhere in the country. So a much, much more efficient process for them. They effectively have one source that they can go to, and we are delivering at a 98% fill rate is a big metric that we use. So that basically means if we're asked to deploy to 100 stores, we're filling at least 98. That's really effectively what we're doing on a national basis. So a very efficient way for them to do that. Seasonal labor is another area which I've gone through that in a big way. The SWAT team concept can be another way of doing that. Really, if you think about kind of the trial period, maybe there's disciplines within a store that rather than going through all of that recruiting process and all the cost and the time that's dedicated to doing that, maybe you tap into a network. If you're a retailer like Instawork, where you can trial the individuals and then ultimately bring them on. So lots of ways. That's really how we really kind of solve. If you saw one of my pitches, the first thing I talk about are the challenges that retailers face. That's what we wake up every day trying to solve for, whether it's a retailer or a consumer goods company, or an agency. We're trying to solve for the problems that they have in the labor market today. And we really consider ourselves experts in the labor space today. We have economists on staff that are full-time that are monitoring the labor market today. We have economic reports that we provide our partners all the time, which allow them to see what in an individual market, what is the average wage, what is the minimum wage, what are the average retailers paying, what is the demographic makeup, and then what are we paying an individual to actually execute the work. So we consider ourselves experts in kind of the labor space on a national scale. And you really need to be today because it's ever changing. We offer both a 1099 model, or an independent contractor model, or a W-2 model, which is very unique for us. Most either offer one or the other. We just have partners that require, based on their policies, a W-2 versus ones that require a 1099. So we're very flexible there. We also have to do it because in certain states now, in legislations such as the state of Massachusetts, we don't have a choice. We have to deploy W-2. 1099s are no longer, classified as individuals that can work retail shifts without being a W-2. And we're seeing that pop up in other areas. And we have a team of people on our legal team that are monitoring that because it's an ever evolving and an ever changing thing. And it's a really challenge to pay attention to. But when you're an expert in the retail in the labor space, you have to really have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the labor market today to be able to service it. And really not just service it for our partners, but service it for the individuals. If you think about an individual that's looking for this kind of gig work, these individuals tend to be much more entrepreneurial. They tend to, they're hungry for work. They're much more tech savvy. All of our work is deployed via our application. It's all electronically done, so you have to have a smart device to be able to work for us. All the reporting is done that way. All the job posting and any kind of instruction and any kind of training is all deployed electronically. So, these individuals are looking for that kind of flexible work. And what our platform does is really just curates those individuals to ensure that we're getting the right person to the right job, which is, again, absolutely critical. In my example of, I don't want to send somebody who's a banquet server to do a reset. Transversely, I don't want to send somebody who's able to do a reset to go and mix drinks and be a mixologist or a bartender. So, very critical. So, and the last thing that I'll just state there is the magic of our platform is being able to deploy to people that we have known skill sets. And I'll just finish up this question with one thing, and that's in terms of our retail pros today go through a very complex vetting process. And we utilize an 11-point background check, which is a basic background check that checks criminal records and all of those basic type of things. Are they a citizen? Do they have car insurance, et cetera? But then we also use AI tools to screen them. Maybe a question is, do you have experience working with a planogram? And if the answer is yes, well, that's great. Give us an example of what a planogram is, where you've done planogram work, what retailers, and give us an example of a project that you did. And we're really trying to dial in to ensure that person really truly does have that retail experience. And in addition to that, we also reference check the individuals, and when a retail pro is assigned to a partner's job, effectively you can rest assured that they've come to you with at least 1 year of experience in retail. That could be working for a retailer, that could be working for an agency. That experience has been vetted. So when that individual comes in, they know what a planogram is, they know what an end cap is, they understand what a gondola is, they've worked in a retail environment, they have that kind of retail jargon, they know what it means to work with a an on-site manager, store manager, assistant manager, department manager, receiving clerk, etc. So they kind of know that space. The only additional thing that we'll deploy is any specific type of training. Maybe it's a video on how to put that fixture together. Maybe it's an overview of how to execute that planogram, or how to work within that C-store to access their stock in the back room and pack it out on the floor. Every retailer's got their own nuances and things that we will potentially have to train or bring that person up to speed on, and that's all done electronically. Gosh, it's every day, really. There's constantly, if you're a retail junkie like I am, and I know you are, Matt, you're constantly seeing news that comes in. We had big news this week at Kroger. We had big news this week with, in the last couple of weeks with another couple of retailers, Joanne Crafts and Fabrics closing all of their stores. Forever 21 just announced yesterday that they're closing a large chunk of their stores. Walgreens announced yesterday that they're going private. So we're constantly trying to, maintain the fact that we're students of the retail trade. It's one of the main reasons I think they recruited me, is based on my experience in the space. But if you're a retailer today, in order to remain relevant, and not go the ways of Toys R Us and Kmart and Pier 1 Imports and now Joanne, you're going to need to maintain a relevancy, and that means your stores are going to need to stay fresh. You're going to need to have a great customer experience, and maintaining those stores and doing all of that in a market, labor market that is, while the unemployment numbers, it can almost be deceiving. Unemployment is low, but yet there's still retailers that are experiencing high levels of turnover. I think we really fit the need of a large part of the labor force now that wants that flexible work. The key is our technology and being able to curate those individuals, right? Like I've mentioned all throughout the discussion. But we can do that in a much more efficient manner than a lot of retailers are doing today, whether it's seasonal labor, whether it's high volume stores, whether it's things like paycheck cycles. So there are a lot of retailers that experience a massive rush the first week of the month when people are getting their funding or their money for the month. So being able to handle that rush without recruiting people and training people and maintaining that staff, we can be a very effective solution to do that. So operationally, from a retailer's perspective, I think that can be huge. From a consumer goods companies, obviously there's great agencies out there like Acosta and Advantage, both of which ironically are clients of ours or partners of ours. We can assist them where they've had huge spikes in its, or huge contracts where they need those 40 people in Ottumwa, Iowa, and it's just not effective for them to bring in 30 or 40 people. So historically what they've done is they've flown people in and put people up in hotels and paid per diems, and that's just not an effective, cost-effective way to do things. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. We can be that local skilled labor that can do that in a much more cost-effective and efficient manner and still get the job done on time. For the retailer that's experiencing turnover because they have a challenge, like I mentioned in the C-store space, lots and lots of areas where we can help the retailer be more efficient. And I think the most important thing is we're paying attention, we're listening, we're out there talking to, everybody from big box retail to grocery retail, C-store, drug, convenience. I just mentioned that, really anywhere that there is a retail footprint, even in things like QSR, quick serve restaurants. I mean, we can deploy these individuals to a lot of locations to get a lot of stuff done, even if it's something as simple as going out and gathering information. Maybe you need to understand, what does the layout look like in the seasonal department in 400 stores, but you don't have a team that can do that or do it quickly enough. Maybe you need that done by, this coming week, and being able to deploy a team like Instawork that can be so flexible and so fast really leads to the efficiency that a lot of companies need. So really lots and lots of areas that we can help a retailer be more efficient as they evolve and leverage those best practices. I'm not a shy person when I'm talking to a retailer. Obviously, not divulging anything confidential, but we're consistently sharing best practices of what we see because we have the unique opportunity of seeing not only how a big box retailer like a PetSmart operates, but like a smaller retailer, like I mentioned with the apparel retailer we're working with, being able to share those best practices across the board in a collaborative way to find a solution that makes the most sense. And then deploying Instawork to handle that is probably the most fun of my job. Instawork is relatively new in the retail space, really the last couple of years. I'm trying my best every day to raise the level of awareness of what we do. You'll see us at trade conferences now, whether that's NACS or this week we're at Expo West or StorePoint. We just joined NACDS. We'll be at NACDS Annual. We are out and about in as many places as we can. What I would encourage you to do is go to our website, instawork.com. You could see lots of information there. You can get access to all those economic reports that we freely share with people. You can learn more about our process. But I guess the most important thing is reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Let me share very briefly. I'm not into death by PowerPoint, so I will be able to walk through our model very quickly, usually in 5 to 10 minutes, and spend time really understanding what are your challenges today? Where can we help? And I'll share examples of how we're helping other retailers with similar challenges today. And the way that the process really works best, in my opinion, is typically things start off as a pilot program where we may assist you and help with one store. But before we do that, I want to have a thorough understanding, and we want to have a thorough understanding of how we can help you, what the pain point is, how we're going to measure that. And I really like, what's most fun is to get out in the market with you and kind of see your stores through your eyes. What are you really facing? And at that same time, it's also going to generate ideas that I have around how we've helped other retailers and done had other best practices that we can apply to the challenge that particular retailer has. So typically there's an initial conversation. If there's buying an agreement, then there's a market visit, and then that ultimately rolls into a pilot, which gets measured, very clearly on what success looks like, and then hopefully it rolls out. And whether that's a one-time effort or a 3-month program to meet your seasonal needs, or it's a long-term solution where we're assisting you with your remodels or in shifts that you're having a tough time filling, or whether it's complementing an agency that you already have that may have challenges in certain geographic areas or certain areas that need a real spike in individuals that they just don't have there. So I think lots of different ways to engage, but it all starts with a conversation, and I love to talk retail. So if anything, that conversation yields you learning a little bit more about us learning a little bit more about you, whether that's something that we do in the next couple of weeks, or it takes 6 months for us to have a solution that fits one of your needs, either seen or unforeseen. We're more than happy to start the conversation immediately.